Everybody, and welcome to Artisan Mentoring, where we talk about everything piano craft. And today we're going to be talking about a real world service that we perform here at Artisan Piano Services at our customers' houses. And that is a full kind of grand action lubrication. So I'm going to kind of show you this in real time, showing you the products that we use and just our kind of systematic process for doing this really great service. The reason I am a big fan of this service is in less than an hour, you're hitting really the major pressure points where there's a lot of friction, or there can be a lot of friction. And this makes a big difference in the way that the piano plays. One of our technicians, Sean, just came in and he had done this lubrication service on a grand piano. He had lubricated the knuckles that were crusty and acting weird. And he said this made it feel so much better. So this is a really great service to offer as one of those kind of additional services. Usually we add this to a service and it's just another hour of additional work. So whatever you bill per hour, this is a great service for that. So I have my grand piano, and the first thing I do is disassemble it, take the case parts off, and just go ahead and bring it to a bench or whatever you want to do. By the way, I'm actually a fairly big fan of, I think Costco sells them, and they're like a breakdown plastic table, and I think it folds in half. I have one of those that I keep in my car, and it's great for something like this. That way you're not on the carpet, that way you're not potentially damaging anything. So having one of those breakdown tables is a great idea.
Walmart has a couple of different variations of that, and that's what my table is behind me as well.
Yeah, they're perfect for this. So the first thing I'm doing is I really want to be careful about how much time I have. So I'm making sure that I have adequate time. So this is typically something that I've gone ahead, told the customer, I said, hey, your piano has probably never had any kind of lubrication service on it. I can see that the knuckles are dry. There's nothing there. Would you like me to go ahead and do more of a full service, maintenance on this? And specifically, do you want me to work on some lubrication? And usually at this point, the customer's like, yes, I've never had anything like this done. Go for it. It's usually, for us, we charge an extra $95 to $150 for this service. And it's something that you can definitely get done in about an hour. And so I highly recommend, if you have a grand piano, Michael, you have a grand piano, to kind of do this service. Play it beforehand so you can get an idea for how it feels before and after. So all that I'm doing right now is I'm simply removing the stack screws, and so that we can get down to the keys and the key frame. And so the major points that we're going to go ahead and lubricate in this training session are going to be the knuckles, the whip and heels. We're going to go ahead and lubricate the key frame. We're going to lubricate the key bed, as well as the key pins, front rail and balance rail. And so we do all of those kind of as our standard. Now, Victor had mentioned, well, what about the repetition lever springs, on the whip-ins? And those are a good point to go ahead and lubricate, but that's usually something that might be an addition, or if you have enough time to do those. But that's another great area to go ahead and reduce friction. So now that I've removed the stack screws, I'm removing the stack, and we are left with the keys, with the stack removed. Now, what I'm going to be using is this stuff right here. This is this McLube 1725L. Stacy, where do we get this? Do you remember?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, Schaff is, but you can also buy it straight from McLube. That's what I got an account with them. I didn't realize I wasn't muted. So it's like trying to unmute. Yeah, I get it from Schaff. So if you just want a bottle, it was Michael that told me that. And then, yeah, you can buy it in bulk if you want.
So what I do here is my first phase of doing this is, and it's all in the customer's house. I'm literally in the house when this is happening. So I've kind of carved out a corner of space, and I'm removing the keys in one spot. Usually by this time, the customer is seeing what you're doing, seeing, wow, the stack's over there, the keys are over there, the key frame is over here, and they're starting to be like, whoa, this dude means business. And they start to kind of get excited, like, wow, you're really doing a lot to my piano, which we are. So again, I'm simply, right now, removing the keys from the key frame. This is the first step to what I do. And there's a reason I'm doing this first, and I'm going to kind of go into that. I like to just kind of set the keys aside. This is a good time, by the way, to go ahead and vacuum that key frame. Kind of all the felts, kind of wipe everything down. This is that ideal time to do that as well. Setting the keys aside. And so again, you're going to kind of give yourself 45 minutes to an hour to do this whole service. Okay. Now that the keys are removed, I have full access to the key frame right here. This is the key frame, whether it's a more entry-level Samick piano like this, or if it's a higher-end grand piano, it's going to look pretty similar. And what we're going to be doing is lubricating not only the key pins that we've talked about, but on the back side, we're going to hit a couple other areas that people usually don't remember. So we're going to be hitting not only the key pins, but we're going to be hitting the glide bolt areas. Usually there's 4 to 6 of those glide bolts. We're also going to be hitting the front of the key frame as well as the back of the key frame. And then we're going to be hitting the edge where the action slides into the piano. So can anybody tell me what to do when you're doing this job, using this spray? What not to do?
Ventilated area.
You got it, Michael. I'm doing it. I'm doing it here. I'm going to kill some brain cells. I do it for you. I do it for the views. So
Yeah,
what I'm gonna do,
I took my frame out on my table outside.
it's pretty smelly, right?
It's very smelly.
So give it a good shake. So I typically kind of hold it because I don't want to put it on the ground. So I'm just going to simply go down, and this is I'm being pretty aggressive with it. Starting to breathe it in. No, I can't recommend doing that. But usually this is something that you will do outside the customer's house, and that's why we do this first. We're going to go ahead and spray it down and let it dry for about 10 minutes while we're doing the other portion of it. But it's just a quick one side, go up and down, and then do the other side. So we've done the key pins. Any questions about that? Pretty straightforward. The next thing I like to hit are these glide bolts. Then I like to go the front of the action frame, back of the action frame, excuse me, the key frame, and then I go to the top and lower sides. Again, these are great because that's where the action is going to be, this key frame is going to slide into the key bed. So lubricating that to make it so that it's moving freer is a good thing to do. I am going to set this outside while it dries. All right. First thing's done. We've gone ahead and lubricated the key frame by specifically lubricating the key pins, the glide bolt area, as well as the parameter really of where the key frame is going to touch the key bed. This is a good time, speaking of key area, to go ahead and lubricate the key bed itself. Now, pretend this is your key bed, which I'm going to be doing it inside the piano, but there's going to be a couple little friction points, and that is literally where you see those glide bolts touching. You're going to want to put a little bit of dab of Teflon powder on that area, as well as the front and the back in a line, again, where that key frame is going to be moving. So again, I like to put a little bit on there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. The thing to keep in mind, can you all still see me? So the thing to keep in mind is just the cleanup of it. Again, I kind of put it throughout, just kind of massaging it into the wood, because what I want is the key frame to not bind at all when the player is playing that una corda pedal. This action needs to slide effortlessly from left to right and back and forth. And just lubricating this key bed area enables it to do that. Slides in and out that much easier. And so I'm going, I kind of really massage it into the wood itself, making sure to get everything kind of nice and coated, but I do want to clean up after myself when I'm done. By the way, on the left-hand side, there's that little horn, that little area that is usually felted on that left-hand side that you press that action into, that key frame into. And I'll go ahead and lubricate the felt on that as well. So again, now we've gone ahead. Go ahead, Victor.
I usually spray that spring on the right side with McLube too.
On the spring?
Yes, because it's going to push against that.
That's a good point. So there's this leaf spring that is usually on the right-hand side of the piano, and that, you're right, Victor, is a great place to go ahead and lubricate. Same with putting a little bit of super lube where the piston, where the trap work, where the damper pedal piston meets the damper tray. That's also a good spot to go ahead and lubricate, which I'm going to do that right now because I know this has never been done. But this is, again, you have everything exposed. So this is the time to go ahead and do all these little treatments. And the number one thing you need to do is notate it on the customer's paperwork. You're going to have this long list of things you did to your piano, including naming all of these little things, just so that they're going to have a record of it, but also the fact that they see how much work you did and how valuable that was. Now we're on to the stack. So again, we're making pretty good time. It's not that hard to do what we're doing, but it is good to kind of have the right order in which you're doing it. So what I'm going to do is flip this around so you all can see. I like to go ahead and simply do this. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
What I'm going to be doing is using a Teflon powder and a grand hammer. I'm going to go ahead and apply this on the knuckles. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is you don't actually have to get both sides of the knuckle thoroughly. It's just the side of the knuckle where it's touching that jack, where it's tripping out. And so that's, in this case, that bottom side. So I'm really big fan of kind of caking it on, massaging it into place, and then brushing it off and then vacuuming it. That's kind of been my protocol. I'm not a big fan of using your fingers because I don't know about you, but I can have like finger oils or whatever grease. I just had some chicken. So you don't want to get that inside of your knuckles. But again, we're just going to go through all the knuckles and we're lubricating them just so that that jack is able to trip out that much easier. I would say, go ahead.
Oh, will you brush the knuckles first with like a brass brush or something if they're really dirty?
And if they're really dirty, I will. I just don't run across it that much that they're that dirty. But yeah, a lot of, that is a good point. If they're really dirty, going down to Home Depot or just going on to Amazon and getting some fine wire, brass wire brushes, and then just going ahead and gently scraping the knuckles to go ahead and remove that. Any kind of weird, I don't know what it is, but sometimes there's weird stuff that can get on it, some kind of dirt. What is it?
I think it's graphite. I think they paint the window, the whipping window with, or the jack window with graphite.
So it's just a bunch of graphite that's gone.
Yeah, the one thing that I saw for applying Teflon as well was just using a Q-tip. But I don't know how effective that is.
I don't know how effective that is because I'm really pushing it. I'm really pushing it into the material and kind of forcing it in. So I can't imagine a Q-tip allowing me to put that much pressure on it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But again, This should only take maybe 5 or 10 minutes. This isn't a big portion of it. However, I feel like this is almost like the single most effective thing that you can do in the whole lubrication, where people are like, whoa, that feels different. That feels better. It sounds better. And so this is a great service to do. And the nice thing is it's only one of like 5 or 6 lubrication points that you're doing. So they all add up to be a really, make a big difference. Story time. One of my most embarrassing moments that thank God that I didn't know that it was happening in the customer's house. I had like this worst cold that I've ever had. And I had like the worst, runniest nose that I've ever had. And so I was just like really wiping my nose left and right. And I went and lubricated the key bed. And like I had some on my fingers and I didn't realize it. So I went to wipe my nose. And there was like this just massive amount of what looked like white dusting that looked like I just like done drugs or something. And the customer was looking at me as I was talking to them. And they just had this weird look like, what did this guy just do? And I'm like, what is going on? Fast forward, I'm done with the service call, go into the car, look through the rear view mirror, and I'm just like covered in this stuff. I just zipped out of there. Never called me back. Sorry. So all that to say is know that this stuff can get everywhere. And if you have a runny nose, be sure not to wipe it on your nose. All that stuff. Okay, we've gone ahead and lubricated the knuckles. Now it's time to lubricate the whip and heels. I'll be the first to admit, I'm not sure how much this does. I think it does a little. And since I have everything out, that's kind of all that matters. And so I'm just kind of massaging it into that felt. Again, this is another part where Victor, you could probably use that brass bristle brush and just kind of massage any of the corrodedness of the felt out before you did this. But it's simply just kind of putting that Teflon powder into the felt, the whip and heel felt, just to kind of make it so that it's that much smoother. By the way, I like doing these jobs, and I was telling our technicians this morning because it pushes me as a technician to see what else I can do within the time I have. So if I'm doing pretty good on time, guess what else I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and tighten all the screws. Since I have everything out, why not? Just double check how tight the screws are. I'm going to do that. I'm going to find little things like that I can do. Even if the customer never knows, even if I never even mention it, I just kind of want to push myself and do that much more at every service call. I don't know if you guys are like that way or not, but that's the way I've kind of pushed myself over the years.
That's a big one, those tightening screws, because usually you'll get a lot of clicks. So I do that just so that I don't put it back together and there's clicking. And I was like, got to pull it back out.
Yeah. The funny thing is, as easy as that sounds, like just tightening the screws, it's kind of like one of my least favorite jobs. I don't know why. It kind of like, I don't know what it is. Like my arms feel like they're on fire afterwards.
That's true. It's especially annoying for uprights because those spoons are in the way, but grounds, it's not that bad.
No, exactly. So again, list off everything that we've lubricated so far, somebody, because those fumes are starting to get to me.
So we had the key pins, the key frame, and the glide bolts with McLube.
Yep.
We had the key bed with Teflon powder.
Yep.
We had the key frame spring there in the felt for where the frame slides in.
Yep. Yep.
We had the knuckles and then the whip and heels, both with Teflon powder.
Perfect. So, because we're doing, what time is it? We're doing great on time. I'm going to go ahead and add additional lubrication to what Victor was talking about, and that is the repetition lever springs. Because we have enough time, let's go ahead and do that. And my goodness, you do that as well as all these other things. This thing is well lubricated. Here we go. This would be the time where you can kind of blow out the action And, you know, as you can see, there's just a lot of excess. So make sure to have some kind of a towel of some sort, some paper towel, something that you can go ahead and, you know, just clean up after yourself. I'm going to go ahead and get a Heart spring tool, which is the tool that I use to lubricate these springs. I'll show you my process for this because I'm really curious, for my own reasons, if it's anything different than what Victor does, because I've only ever done it my way. I've only ever seen it done my way, so I'm really curious. So I'll be right back. All right, so what I like to do in this particular job is to get a little piece of paper like this and go ahead and squirt a little bit of this super lube onto it. It's just simply like kind of like you were going to go painting. I put a little bit on there like that. And the next thing I do is I kind of do it, you know, Ford style, where I have an assembly line, if you will. And I'm going to just go through and quickly remove all the springs and put them to the left-hand side. Can you see that? Can you see what I'm doing? I'm going to see if I can zoom this in a little bit.
Yeah, you can see the tails peeking out of the spring.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that just, as much as you can get done in just a quick fail swoop like this. Victor, am I doing everything that you do so far?
I do it different. I don't take the springs out.
What?
Yeah.
All right, elaborate.
Well, usually I don't do this on grands. I do it for uprights. I use this either McLube or a needle, and I put it in there and coat that groove that the spring sits in.
All right, so.
But yeah, so this is different. But I have sprayed this with McLube before.
Okay.
Kind of sprayed up in there just to coat that area, and it works pretty well.
Okay. Well, this will at least give you another way of doing it as well.
Yeah, this is definitely the right way. Like the other way is just trying to do it as fast as you can.
Well, I'm kind of doing the same thing as fast as I can, but I do feel like it really coats the where you want it to coat. And again, the reason that you do this is a lot of times when you're playing the note, you'll hear a weird like oinking or a creaking. And the way you know that it is this issue is you simply pull the action out like I've done and just kind of press on these repetition levers, and you'll hear a little bit of that creaky sound because it's that spring rubbing against the underneath side. It needs to be lubricated. What did I just do? Did you guys see balloons just there?
I did. That was kind of cool. I don't know how you did it.
It just kind of went like that. I don't know what happened. So the easy part in this whole process is doing this first part of it, which is removing the springs from their homes. The hard part is lubricating them, getting a little dollop of lubrication on it, and then going ahead and putting them back in their homes. I'm extra careful while I'm removing these springs to not bend the spring either down or up. I'm just kind of barely touching it and pulling it to the side because I don't want to change that stiffness at all. Okay, all those have been removed. The next part of it is the tricky part, and that is simply putting a little dab. Let's see if you can. It's probably a little bit much. And I'm actually kind of pressing down. Let's do this. Oh, wow, that's a pretty good view. Yeah, let's do this one. Pressing it down and putting a little bit on that. Can you see that? Yeah, you can see
that's visible.
Yep. So what you want to do is do that to each one of these. And you're not dipping it every time, but you're just putting a little bit right there on top of them. And what you want to do is really, coat that top of it, but you don't want to get very much on, you really want to keep it contained to that metal spring and nothing else as much as you can, because you don't like to discolor the wood or anything, but you also want to make sure that you get enough of it on there to where there's still going to be some actually getting into the canal where it's supposed to go. So again, this is one of those lubrications that I might, charge an additional service fee for, unless you're really fast and you're like, oh man, I have time, I'm just going to go for it. In which case, yeah, to each their own. So right now my my keyframe is still, well, it's probably dry now, usually about 10 minutes or so. I'm feeling pretty good about it. After I'm done with this quick section right here, I'm going to go ahead and bring my keyframe back in, and I'm going to put my keys on really quick, and then we're going to do one more lubrication of the keys, and I'll show you what that is, and then we're going to let it dry while we finish this lubrication. And then we'll be pretty good for doing this kind of grand lubrication service. And hopefully you can see, like, okay, this isn't really scary. There's nothing out of the norm. It's pretty basic. I'm going to go ahead and get the keyframe, and I'm going to go ahead and put on the keys, because the last thing that we're going to do to this servicing of the keys, lubrication of the keys, is actually lubricating these capstans, and that's a big one. And so that capstan lubrication is another one that you definitely want to do. And it's funny because, like, I go and slide the keys back on, and I'm amazed at how well, even just with that quick treatment, that everything feels lubricated much better now. They slide right back on those key pins. I do always kind of wonder, I'm like, did I just rub it all off?
I think that every time. I was like, oh, it's gone.
I'm going to choose to believe no, it's still good. Again, usually at this time in the customer's house, they're just like blown away. They're offering you some coffee or a drink of water, because they're just like, you're blowing their minds with all the stuff that you're doing. And they're kind of just at this point like, whoa, that was definitely worth the extra whatever it was.
So David, since I've already redone my keys and I actually redid the pins, lubricating the pins, but I didn't do the lubrication of like the glide bolts and on the sides of the frame. Is that something that I should be able to do as far as the bottom of the frame with the glide bolts without having to remove all the keys?
Totally. You won't even have to remove the stack for that, because you're just going to kind of tip the action on its side and carefully go ahead and just spray everything.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Because the only thing I really haven't done would have been I haven't done the knuckles yet. I still need to do the knuckles, but I didn't do the whip and heels.
Yeah.
But I did do the capstans. Now, since I was using flits to polish the pins, I use flits on all of the capstans. What are you going to go through for your process?
Boom. That's it. Just simply spraying. I'm gonna put this on over here. So just so you know, everything that I'm showing you, for the most part, I didn't invent this. Like, what happened is I used to work with a retailer. I mean, we still work with them very closely. Amazing retailer, classic pianos. Like, I think they won like Yamaha or Busendorfer Dealer of the Universe for the last like 10 years. It's like, they're great. They do so much. And this was part of their protocol that I was taught by my mentor there. And they do this kind of thing for all their new pianos. And so it was one of those things that I was kind of amazed at the level of work that they did to these. And I felt like it really did make a big difference, because we could play it before the work was done and then after, and it was pretty amazing. And so we're like, okay, when we started doing more of our own artisan stuff, this became more of a part of our routine as well. So I'm a big fan of it, but I didn't invent it, which I guess I could be even a bigger fan because then I'm not saying I did it. I can just appreciate it. By the way, when we started learning it, we didn't know, we were told to kind of use this McLube spray, but we didn't know how bad it was for you. And so imagine you have like 10 technicians spraying this kind of in the workshop, working on pianos all day long. We go, like at some point we're just like, man, we're so dizzy. We're just getting headaches or whatever else. And then like the owner comes in, he's like, what is that smell? And we're like, what? At that point, you're kind of blind to it. And so we learned pretty quickly, okay, this is just too much. So then we started doing it outside, which makes more sense and it's safer. So again, just lubricating these repetition lever springs, kind of getting a nice kind of dollop. I don't know if that's the right word, dollop of lubrication on it. And I would say that this is especially good to do to these lower end grand pianos because they seem to not either have the proper amount of lubrication or maybe they're worn through because they're not a higher end lubrication applied in the first place. So it's not a bad thing to do to these. I don't know, if I were to guess, I think that this portion of the lubrication probably adds 15 to 20 minutes. So, you know, if you're doing all the other lubrication service in about 45 minutes, you might be able to do that, you know, add this portion of it within the hour window that you're kind of having. Again, all these services are good to do, and it's another reason to get to where your tuning times are down to an hour or less. Because the reality is most people don't want you in even if they want the work done, they don't want you in their house for more than a couple hours. So if you robbed them of being able to do all this other work because it's taking you 2 to 3 hours to do a tuning, it's not great. You're not doing great service. And so if you're able to do this kind of level, it just elevates the customer's piano, unlocks more potential. It elevates the experience overall. It's just everybody wins. It's just so quiet. Just towards the end of it, I start to get a little sloppy, I think. Okay, so now's the part where I would say this is the next part is my least favorite part because it's kind of difficult, and that is you want to go ahead and reinstall each of those springs, but try to keep that dollop of lubrication still intact. And that's easier said than done. And so you just have to kind of, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll hold that back end of the lever and just kind of, that way it's not moving downwards. I'm just kind of gently putting all of these back into their homes. Yeah, it feels good. But yeah, this is definitely the more invasive, more difficult way of doing this particular lubrication service. But I do believe that it's a fairly long-lasting service, you know, that will hold up long term. There's so many things that you can do, and as I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the spacing of all my whippings, and I'm like, ugh, it needs some whipping spacing. Oh, it needs this and this. And that's what's going to happen when you're in the customer's house, and when you're doing this kind of level of service, you're going to find other things. That's okay. Just say, you know, at the end of it, hey, I've gone ahead and lubricated everything. I do have some recommendations next year when I come out. Maybe we give a little bit more time to do some, you know, part spacing and aligning, a little bit of this or a little bit of that. And, you know, because a lot of times that's all that people have the ability to do is just little spurts here and there at their time of their service. So we just kind of meet the customer where they're at.
I like how Lucy Erlacher in her class at the convention put it, notate it in your notes as NT for next time.
Ooh, that's good. Yes.
I thought that was pretty cool way to notate it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that we have a tab on our Gazelle. What is it? Is it recommended services or additional services, Stacy? I don't even remember.
We do put it on the invoice, like recommended services. So I mean, then the customer has that record. That's usually how we're keeping track of it. Because then when I look to schedule the next year, I can see what we recommended. But I like that.
Michael, are you using Gazelle? I can't remember. Victor?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Are you doing it as
Yes.
well? Yeah.
Yes.
How far into this training video are we, Stacy?
We're about 40 in.
Yeah. So there you go.
Exactly 40. You're doing good. Woo, good time.
But you can see that it's like, I'm definitely, I'm not slacking. It's like, it's worked the whole way through. But you can definitely see that we've been able to do everything for sure within this 1 hour window that we would want to do. And again, if you have that time, do more. Perfect. So now, now I'm bringing in the action or the keyframe to go ahead and install the action back onto it. And at this point, I'm putting the hammers back down and also saying, we need to do some hammer repinning. Like slowly going down some of them. That might be a good, I can't do that in an hour, by the way, but we can get some headway. That might be a good training service.
If you're doing a service like this, lubricating everything, and you notice that, will you try to lubricate some of those flanges that are slow?
To be honest, I'm actually not recommending I do this service. I'm first recommending they do that repinning. And if they don't go for that, then yeah, I can kind of do that Band-Aid fix of, because I don't know, I think of it more as a Band-Aid fix, the lubrication of the flanges like that. I could be wrong. I don't know how long that lasts,
Does that mainly fall if there's one or two, then it becomes more of a temporary repair versus a full repin?
Yeah, I mean, like looking at this, here we go. I'm just gonna pull off one of what looks to be a slower one. Here in the Northwest, I want this to swing about 7 to 9 times. 1, 2, 1, 2, 2.5. So I'm going to bring the customer to show them this. Hey, it really needs to have some repinning work. It's going to take us a day to do it and bring it back. Do you want to do that? And so to kind of each their own, that would make a big difference, is repinning that along with everything that we're doing. But most customers are not looking to drop, they're having you come out for tuning and not necessarily to drop $1,500 on some of this stuff. Especially for their $3,000 entry-level piano here. There we go. Typically when I'm also, by the way, reinstalling the stack, I'm going to the back far left, the back far right, then the front far left, front far right screws, and then going in the center, back to front. That's my protocol to kind of lock in the action. I'm curious what you all do. I think I asked Jacob this once.
Yeah, I go through the similar process. I can't remember whether I do exactly the same, but one thing I heard is that you always want to do the straight drilled in screws, which are in the back first.
Yes.
Because if you do the fronts that are at an angle, you're going to push the action back and you're going to get stuff out of alignment. So you want the backs in first, before you do the fronts.
Good call. So yeah, that goes in line with this. It's just the back far left, back far right. Another thing that you all can do, especially with these more entry-level kind of Asian-made pianos, is get a little bit of the thin set CA glue and drizzle a little bit of that into the screw holes. Let it dry for about 10-15 minutes. And that way it just really kind of firms up those wood fibers, because these are very prone, and I'm noticing at least one of these is stripped out because that wood is just really not very dense. And so by putting a little bit of that CA super glue, really thin stuff, letting it drizzle down and really solidify, that really helps give these screws something to bite onto. Have you ever done that? I didn't come up with that. My mentor showed me that.
I've just done the toothpick for that. But I never realized how important the action screws are until I think I mixed up 2 screws and it just wouldn't tighten right. And the whole base section was not letting off because that stack was not on there right. And chasing those screws, that was the worst nightmare.
Yeah, one thing that I did is I took a piece of cardboard from a cereal box or whatever, poked holes in it, wrote on there what the screws were front and back, and be able to just have that. And that way you're always keeping stuff in the same spot.
You know what, Michael? I used to think that was only a good trick for like the antique pianos, like historic pianos, where they didn't have as proper of, perfect, between the screws. But actually, it's a really good thing to do for pianos like this, which again, some of them are just smaller in the front, longer in the back.
Yeah, any piano, I think, makes sense just to keep the same screw in the same hole. That way you have less likely for any issues.
Exactly.
Because what if one of the threads are just slightly different?
Perfect. Nice. Lubrication service. That's how we do it. That's it. That's it. This would be the point where you can go ahead and also lubricate. If you have your pedal assembly, of course, it's attached to the bottom side of the piano. Go ahead and put a little bit of super lube there, as well as super lube right here. And then maybe put a little bit of the Teflon powder if you can kind of get it inside this felt right inside here with this guide rail. So this is the pedal rod guide rail is kind of what it's called, and has little felts that those holes are lined with. But that, my friends, is how you do kind of that full lubrication service. I love this service. It's one of those things you can do in an hour. It hits all the major points, and the customer knows the difference. And also, if you're going to guarantee your work, it really helps make sure that down the line you're not having these issues. And now that you've done it, every year afterwards, you can go ahead and just kind of top it off. It's like, hey, on my service, I'm going to go ahead and, I'm noticing that this is dry or this needs a little bit, but you've gone ahead and done this full service, and now it's just kind of that maintenance mode. So what do you think? Is this something you all feel comfortable to go ahead and offer, or does this seem a little...
Yeah, I need to go through the process a few times, but yeah, I think this is something, it should be fairly doable personally. I've already done part of it with doing 2 keyframes already, and
yeah,
so that part's easy. And now it's just working with the Teflon powder on the knuckles and other areas.
Yeah. I mean, you can just imagine if really eventually all of your customers are having this kind of work done, just the level of and the quality of their pianos and the way they're performing is just going to be so much more elevated. And that's what we're here to do, is just really elevate and unlock what the pianos are potentially able to do. So, but this is, again, a fun service. You're able to do it in an hour roughly and hit all of these pressure points. It's a fun service to do, especially once you're done with it and you see like, wow, I just did that. Do make sure like I'm just looking around right here. There's a lot of Teflon powder. So do make sure to wipe everything up and make sure that you have all that cleaned up, because you're going to just get people like, what is this stuff? What is this? And baby powder, is it powdered sugar? Is it something worse? What is this? So do also explain that, hey, I'm using this Teflon powder. It's not, it's harmless. Don't worry about it. I'm going to clean up after I'm done, but you may see a little bit of that, but it's just a lubricant powder that we use. Wednesday, we're going to talk about calibration, and specifically what I'm going to be doing to this one is kind of all the steps of that calibration. I'm going to see if I can get some good angles so you all can really kind of see what I'm looking for and how I'm doing it. Yeah, it's going to be so-so. We'll see how, but at least I'll show you I'm in the piano. I'm doing this in the piano so you can get an idea for that. All right. Go ahead and lubricate some pianos, and I'll see you on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.